Okay, awesome. Okay, well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our midweek prayer meeting and Bible study. Georgiana is on her way to come up. Sue's not able to be with us tonight with a little bit of a cough. So, warmer weather, so I hope that encourages people to come on out as that's the forecast, hopefully, no more snow, as well as the fact that it's light out. So that's always nice when that happens. It's always that transition from our dark period from December, January, and February. It starts to get a little bit lighter. So anyways, we're just waiting a little bit. What's that? Oh, okay. All right. Very good. So, well, let me go over a few announcements with you. We'll skip that part when we get to it. If you have your bulletin, let me highlight a few things that are going on this upcoming month. We did give a handout to all the parents in our 3rd through 6th grade, but the 1st and 2nd graders are going to get the handout on Monday, apparently, in the parent pack. But I can still announce it. So we have Parents' Night Out is Saturday, March 25th, starting at 5 o'clock. Now, you don't have to be there right at 5, and you don't have to wait until 9 to pick up your kids. But if you do drop them off at 5 and pick them up at 9, the recommended amount would be $20 per child for the entire time. Or you're welcome to give more, certainly. And all that money will go towards the trip that we're planning on taking to the Sight and Sound Theater in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So we've already got the tickets. We already got the house. We are set to go. There's going to be 12 of us going down in the church bus, and so we're looking forward to that. Okay? All right. This coming Saturday, gentlemen, we have our men's prayer breakfast. So we're going to meet here at 8, spend some time in prayer. We're going to go over a few things, take some testimonies, highlight a few upcoming things that we need to go over. And then once we're done with that, I'm going to bring a quick devotion. We're going to head down to Northside Grill. If it's busy over there, there's another restaurant in the London area called Janie's. We've been there a few times. They have a lot more seating. So we'll try there. But either way, we're going out rather than eating here. And so again, that's open to everybody. You don't have to be a member of the church. We'd love to have some guys come out for that. So if you happen to be watching this and you're interested in coming, being part of the men's prayer breakfast at 8 o'clock this upcoming Saturday. So when we get back here, though, deacons and trustees will have our meeting. And we got a lot to discuss, some things that are very important. So, all right, life groups are continuing. So we have week 3 this coming week. We're going to be talking about victory over sinful habits, how God helps us to have victory. Romans chapter 6. So I'm looking forward to bringing that sermon. I got to preach it to myself first, beat myself up in the Word, and then bring it for Sunday. So hopefully it's been a blessing to be a part of the life groups. We had a good group at our house on Sunday night. We had some good discussion, good food, good fellowship. And I've heard the same, so maybe there'll be some testimonies during the testimony time. All right, 190, Georgiana. Give you a breather over there. And let's stand together if you're able to. And then we'll take some favorites after that. 109, there's a Redeemer. seated. How about some favorites? Let's take a few. Nancy.
81.
81. Let's see, what is that?
Let's see.
Yes, Almighty Fortress is our God. What verse? Verse 1. Here we go. Almighty Fortress is our God. A bulwark never failing. Our helper He with the flood of mortal ills prevailing. Still our nation cold, not seek to work us woe, His help and power great, and on with whom on earth is not His equal. Good singing. Somebody else, favorite song tonight? Bum-bum-bum-bum. Anybody at all? 138. 138, what verse, Brother Roger? 138, Love Lifted Me. We'll sing verse 2. Let's sing together. All my heart to Thee I give, never to anyone leave. In His blessed presence live, ever His praises sing. Love so mighty and so true, merits my soul's best songs. Faithful, loving service to Him belongs. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me. All right, good singing, everybody. Thank you, Georgiana, for playing. And take some testimonies right now. Does everybody have the handout? What's that? Yes, your handout.
The writing is tiny, though.
That is a test of your eyesight. In fact, I had to take the top part, which normally says Tabernacle Baptist Church Wednesday prayer meeting, and the date, I had to remove that. So yes, that was just to get it all in there. There was a lot of stuff. I'm not sure if we're going to get through everything tonight, but we'll try. It's just one verse, Philippians 4:8, but it talks about adding all those things, all the things we're supposed to be thinking about. There's 6 things we're supposed to think about. All right. Anybody have to be Amish for a little bit yesterday? Lose power?
2 minutes.
Yeah, that's not ever fun. Yeah, we lost it for about 3 seconds, so we feel bad for all of you guys that were without. And some of you have generators, others living off the grid for a little while. Yes.
Yesterday, Brendan left early to go up to Pease so he could do his stuff and get back. And he got back. Just after he got back was when they closed between exit 4
Oh,
and
yeah.
exit 5 for
Right.
a couple hours. He would have been, you know, he was very close to getting stuck in that mess, and I'm so thankful that he was home safe. That's no way to spend your birthday, stuck in
No,
traffic.
that's right, yeah.
So tonight he's in Mississippi. They sent him down there to escort a plane. Some jets just can't make it across the ocean without, refueling. So he has to go in case something breaks. So he's suffering,
All right, good to hear. Brendan had a close counter there, but able to miss that. Anybody else with a testimony about anything? Give God praise, Joe. Today's Doreen's birthday, yes. Happy birthday. I didn't look at the bulletin closely enough there. All right.
Nice.
Anybody else with a testimony? All right, if there are none, we already went over the announcements, so we'll just skip that. But let me read to you our missionary prayer letter from the Hoagies. The Hoagies have been, yes, Roger.
There's one thing I was thinking about yesterday. We were, unbeknownst to everyone except you and me, we were a blessing to somebody yesterday. There was a trucker from Canada who had run out of time. He'd been in traffic and couldn't get where he was going, and he needed to stop. And when I came over, he was parked in the parking lot, and we were thankful that there was a place that he could stop.
Yeah. Maybe he got stuck in that traffic and he couldn't travel. I thought it was kind of odd. I saw it on the camera, a big 18-wheeler type tractor trailer that backed into the church parking lot. It was there for a little while. Roger went up to him and asked him, what was going on. So seemed like a friendly enough guy. I was actually going to drive over here and try to talk to him, but then I thought maybe he's sleeping, so I didn't want to bother him. But yeah, if we can be a blessing, sometimes that's what happens. So people have used our parking lot for different things, including shooting fireworks. I wasn't happy about that, but sometimes people stay in here and they rest for a little bit. So this guy was gone by midnight, right? And then appreciate Roger coming over twice in the last 24 hours or so. Probably came over yesterday and did a lot of work in trying to maintain the snow. It was a wet snow, very, very heavy. And in fact, our boys, we broke 2 shovels just trying to shovel the stuff. And that wasn't even what I actually broke one of them. It wasn't even anything super heavy, just handle snapped. Got by a couple more for the church here, but yeah, we were able to shovel in the morning, and Roger was able to come back this morning and get it ready for school. So one of the things that we have to do besides getting the parking lot ready is we have to make sure all the emergency exits are done, and that's to have the building occupied at any time, church or school. So I appreciate my boys coming over, willing to do that. Most of the time, totally willing to do it. We'll leave it at that. Come on, guys, let's go. Somebody else with a testimony. Yes, Nancy.
I just want to thank Bev that she texts me all the time to tell me how hot it is in Florida.
Oh, yes.
And how well
Right.
the pool is maintained, and she was supposed to go out sailing, but it wasn't good, so she might have to go at another time. And I told her that I'm going to put snow in the freezer for her for when she comes home, and I'm going to give it to her.
Yeah.
No, she likes to make everything nice. I said, no.
Oh, yes.
We could have a snow fight.
I'm reminded of that.
I did that
Facebook.
once.
I know. I sent her a picture of what the driveway looked like from our ring cam.
Yeah, she told me, yeah.
All right. Thank you for those testimonies. Appreciate those. All right, let me read to you the prayer letter from the Hoagies. They've been ministering in the Philippines for a number of years. So their latest prayer letter is kind of a update on what's been happening since January. They said the new year has brought new opportunities and victories to reward your prayers and support for our missionaries. We're very excited to know that the work at Faith Baptist Church in South Metro and the educational ministries continue to return to the levels that were there before the COVID lockdowns. Many parents pulled their children out of the schools and signed them up with our homeschool academies. Some of the schools had to cut back their operations during that time. Some were not able to reopen at all. But those that persisted have come out stronger now that things are opening back up. We have tickets to depart the United States, and at the time of this letter, they said it was February 28th. So this means that we'll be able to present 2 major events in our calendar year. So I did get another follow-up letter to this, probably about maybe a week ago, saying that they were back in the States and that he was having knee surgery, or maybe his wife, maybe Laura was. Either one. So one of them was. Anyways, it says, in April, we're going to host all the school pastors and administrators in our facilities. We're praying that we will be able to encourage them in the work of preparing a generation of godly leaders. The 2022 report for the Bless Ministry, and again, that's all of the different Christian schools that they've started. They have a number of Christian schools that they've helped establish. So that's what that means. It says the prospects for an even greater year in 2023 looms because so many children were kept out of the school for 2 years. So we anticipate also working with churches who will help us to reach their local areas with English intervention program for, quote, at-risk students. Please keep this in your prayers. It's a vital part of our goals for this and several years to come. We believe that as we take the Word of God into these students' lives, we will also be able to reach into homes never before touched with the gospel. Faith Baptist Church runs about 15 Bible during the week, led by people of our church. There were over 200 professions of faith last year from these Bible studies. Below we can, and then they have like a little chart kind of explaining which Bible studies and how many people were baptized and so forth. So they say, please rejoice with us as we see that again, please rejoice with us as we see that again for the past year the Lord has been blessing with over 2,000 people making professions of faith. Only eternity will reveal those whose lives were changed because of your faithful prayers and gifts. Thank you for being a blessing, Brother Dale Hoagie. So let's continue to pray for them. Philippines is a ripe country for the gospel, and we have several missionaries that are over there doing a good work, and the Hoagies are very, very involved in training the young people. Okay, so let's get right into it. Let's take our Bibles and go to Philippians 4. We're just going to be looking at one verse tonight, Philippians 4:8. However, there's a lot to this verse. It's almost as if this verse is 3 or 4 verses long. So if you are following along with us at home, Philippians chapter 4, we're going to continue our study through the book of Philippians by asking this question: how does your thought life affect your actions? All right, chew on that for a few minutes and then give me your thoughts. We've got a kind of an intimate crew tonight, but I'm sure we can get talking. All of you are capable of giving your thoughts. Dave, how does your thought life affect your actions?
Well, the Bible tells us what you think you are, you are. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Who said that?
Jesus.
All right. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. All right, so very good. Dave's point is the very fact that what we're thinking about in our life is who we become. Somebody else. How does your thought life affect your actions? Andrea.
If you're anxious about something and you were to put all these things into play, is it true, is it not, that you have to say, when you start thinking about something that if you want to worry about, then if you start reflecting on these things in your heart, is what I'm thinking about true? Is it lovely? You know, those things, then you can change your thinking and stop the worrying, and because you have to put it through all these filters.
Okay, very good. We're going to talk about that just a little bit too. Worrying. We actually talked about that last week. Somebody else, anybody else have a thought about this? All right, Brother Ron?
Well, if you have negative thoughts, you're going to look at the world negatively. It's always going to be, half empty.
Okay, true.
Versus if you think positive, if you are a positive outlook on life and a positive reaction, you'll think of the glass as half full.
Okay. Good thoughts. And let's build upon that, certainly, with the Word of God. Philippians 4:8. Paul is really transitioning to the end of his discourse concerning any teaching. You're going to find that once we get to verse 10 and 11, really all the way to the end of the chapter, he gives instructions that are a little bit more personal. He's writing specifically to the Philippians. He's talking about how they communicated with him in the sense that they sent money and sent other means of support. Remember, the Philippian church was very much a supporting church of Paul. So Paul says, "My God shall supply all your need." Remember, that verse cannot be taken out of context without understanding that that verse means when you give to the Lord and support His work, God will provide your needs. It's just not a promise, an empty promise of God supplying your needs. You got to look at verse 19 in context. Anyways, he gives kind of more of a personal benediction. So this is really the last verse or two, really 8 and 9, are connected with his instruction about how we shouldn't worry but pray. We shouldn't worry but give God thanks. We shouldn't worry, but we should also then think upon these things. And really, when you think about it, all 6 of the things that we're supposed to think about could be sermons in and of themselves. Okay? So yes, had to modify the handout a little bit. I know it's like, maybe harder to read than normal, but I wanted to make sure that I put the stuff there. I thought I was just going to put the main points and then you guys could fill in whatever you wanted, but I thought, well, I would like you to get the info here. So Jonathan Edwards, the great preacher of the Great Awakening, said this: the ideas and images in men's minds are the invisible powers that constantly govern them. Do you agree with that? Interesting, isn't it? Again, what we rehearse in our minds, what we think about, the conversations that we have internally are our thoughts. And so Paul is encouraging us to really think about what we meditate upon. And so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Biblical meditation, what we think about. Let's read verse 8 and 8 alone. The Bible says, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise," let's say the last four words together. Think on these things. All right, let's get right into it. Number one, think upon the truth. Think upon the truth. Let's go back to the beginning of verse 8. What does this mean? Well, the word true means factually true or real. It's the Greek word aletheis, where we get the word aletheia, the idea of that which is true or right. Here we have Paul encouraging the church here at Philippi to dwell upon things that are real, things that are true, what God has revealed to be right and true. And so what God has declared to be true is healthy. And so when he wrote to Timothy, Paul, through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, recognized that truth flows from the giver of truth, our one true God. Let's turn, if you would, to 1 Timothy chapter 6. 1 Timothy chapter 6, and notice what Paul says to Timothy concerning the giver of truth, our one true God. All right, 1 Timothy chapter 6, and we look at verse 20. As we think about this, these are Paul's instruction to Timothy to fight the good fight of faith and to be that spiritual warrior for the Lord. So we get to the very end, he says, "O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust." What was entrusted to Timothy? What did Paul say was entrusted to Timothy? His calling to preach, the authority he had in the local church, the gospel, the true gospel. All right, you remember, Paul, as well as John and Peter, wrote often encouraging the church, but warning the church against false teachers. Have you ever heard anybody speak of the true gospel or the whole gospel? Anybody ever heard that before? Well, I've said it. The Bible warns that there's a false gospel. If any man preach another gospel, and then Paul says, not that there is another gospel, but if somebody preaches another gospel, let him be what? Accursed. Galatians 1 is very clear on that. So here we have, you've been entrusted, Timothy, with the true gospel. So he goes on to say, avoiding profane and vain babblings and opposition of science, falsely so-called. Again, do we have a lot of falsely so-called science today? What would be a good example of that today? Darwinian evolution. It's where we have the problem with racism exists from the very fact that everybody is evolving from different lines of Neanderthals. And so this idea that you're more evolved than others, it was interesting talking with Jong Soo, who sees me and others in our family that have hair on our arms and chest, and a lot of Asians and Koreans, they don't have that. And so they think that we're still evolving. Yeah. Seriously, he kind of said it jokingly, but semi-serious in their culture. And so you see races are based upon, what does that even word mean? It means the way that they come from the cavemen and how they've evolved. That's science falsely so-called. The Bible makes it very clear. We all come from two people, Adam and Eve. All right, what would be another example of science falsely so-called? Melody? The earth is millions of years old. The universe is 4 billion years old. And of course, they base that upon how far they think that light has been traveling out since the Big Bang. And so you get to verse 21, it says, which some professing have erred concerning the faith. Do you see that? So if Paul was speaking to Timothy very clearly about holding on to the truth and making sure that he understood what that was, it makes sense that we would understand that to be something that was true. And so it's important that we recognize that God is the giver of truth. Let's think about this. God himself is the final test of truth. A commentator that I enjoy reading from David Guzik from Enduring Word, he said, since he is unchanging, talking about God, the moral standards revealed in his word, which stem from his holy nature, are also unchanging. Isn't that awesome to think about? So again, as we go back to Philippians chapter 4, we're speaking of the things that we're supposed to think about. What should we think about? Things that are true, things that are right. There's a lot of people who enjoy science fiction or just enjoy reading about things that aren't necessarily true for the purpose of entertainment, and I don't really have a major problem with that. However, I do think that our thoughts should dwell upon that which is true. Now, this is a huge debate, and I want to recognize it, but I'm not necessarily going to talk about it. It will be the series that will go after this. But Jesus said in John chapter 8:26, and I just kind of want to pause that thought, and I'll get back to it later. What did Jesus say about God? He, talking about the Father, that sent me is what? True, same word. Think upon that which is true, Philippians 4:8. And then he says, and I speak to the world those things which I have heard of him. So as Christians, we know that there are clearly things that are right and things that are wrong, no matter what popular opinion may claim to be acceptable. So whether the normal cultural acceptances are in the majority, which oftentimes they're not, there are things that are perverted and weird, and they're forced upon people as if, well, everybody thinks this way. No, they don't. Teens are often influenced that way too. The moment something is cool, doesn't matter if it's dorky. And we've all been victims of that. I've shared with our kids what their mother and I used to, how their mother and I used to dress when we were teenagers. And they just look at us like, really? I said, well, why don't you see what Grandma and Grandpa, how they used to dress? But we all thought it was cool at the time, right? And over the years that I've worked with teens, I've seen fads change, come and go. A lot of videos that are on YouTube that kind of make fun of those stereotypes. If you were a teen of the 90s or a teen of the early 2000s, or if you were a teen in the 2010s, and and it's all every generation, every 7 or 8 years or so, makes fun of the other generation. The point is that we get to this place where we're saying we're not talking about just fads or things that are socially acceptable for the time because people are just trying to sell clothing or styles of, whatever, outerwear. We're talking about things that are a perversion of God's natural order. And when that becomes acceptable, and people are like, oh, you're this, your phobia is against this or that. Even saying, for people who are extremely obese and overweight that, those people certainly need to get on a diet and lose weight. Oh, you're fat phobic. Right, there's that movement there. You're against people thinking it's okay to be attracted to children. That's going to be the new thing that will be socially acceptable over time. It's just a matter of wearing people out to say, okay, come on, everybody's okay with this. What is right and what is wrong? Even when Matt Walsh went around for about a year on a whole bunch of different talk shows asking the question, what is a woman? Has anybody ever seen that before? It's crazy. He spent a long time speaking, receiving hate mail, death threats, interviewing people. What is a woman? Biology, anatomy, and gender are the same thing. But some people think that there are hundreds of genders. And by the way, that is a movement that is so awful. In fact, I'm going to be bringing a message called How to Survive a Post-Truth World. I'm going to bring a whole bunch of lessons on that after we're done with Philippians. We have got to know what truth is. And because we know what it is, that will help us to live in a crazy world. It's not just post-Christian world, it's post-truth. People say your truth and my truth. What? There's no such thing. And so I'm starting to get into that, and I need to just stop here for a moment. But think on those things which are true, not made up. What God has revealed. And so that's what happens when conservatives, who may not necessarily be biblical Christians, get all worked up. They're all upset. It's interesting, even people who used to lean really, really far left in some of their positions politically are starting to realize that the new coming liberals will eat them for lunch because they're not as progressive as they should be. And so even liberals are getting like, this is crazy. Bill Maher, who's not even close to being a conservative, or even what's that one guy, that British guy that's on a lot of TV shows? I think he's on Fox News now, but he used to. I could see his face. Anyways, there's been people who have been very, very hard left, and would mock conservatives are now realizing they're getting pushed more towards the middle because they're being told to accept things that are outrageous. Because one generation says you're not progressive enough, and it's constantly pushing people off a cliff of moral sanity. Remember, that's what the word reprobate or depraved means, moral insanity. Again, we really need to move on. I'm going to start preaching this. All right, anyway, somebody has a thought. Roger, I know you have some thoughts on this too, I'm sure. Yes, not only have I know about it, that's a school that we've invited to our league. I've tried to contact the principal. What Roger's talking about is Mid-Vermont Christian Academy. The principal's name is Vanessa Fogg, and I applaud her for what she did. She found out that their girls' basketball team was going to be facing another team in a playoff game that had a male that was pretending to be a girl. A trans athlete. And they were concerned about the girls' safety, which, by the way, we don't even very often scrimmage the boys against the girls here at Tabernacle. I mean, we do once in a while, but the boys would annihilate the girls very easily. And it's not that the girls aren't good, it's just that I'm worried about, can you imagine Luke running over some of these girls? Or even Caleb or Johnny, right? And I don't really feel like paying their medical bills, and I don't want to see that happen to little Tiffany or some of the other young ladies. But that's what happened. So this school, this Christian school in Vermont said, okay, we're forfeiting the game. Once you think about it, I'm sure they worked hard to get to that point to make it to the tournament. They said, we're not playing. The Principal Association of Vermont has banned this Christian school from any post-tournament play forever. Now, this is a Christian school that was going to join our league, the New England Association of Christian Schools. So I reached out to the athletic director yesterday, in fact. I was talking to him for about an hour, and I said, we need to welcome them in with open arms, saying we'll play them. So I'm going to contact that school, and Tabernacle is going to play Mid-Vermont Christian Academy in sports. And we'll drive all the way up to Vermont and play them and support them. But that's also happening with another Christian school in Methuen, Massachusetts. Fellowship Christian Academy was told that a 6'4" boy who had a full beard, just like our son Luke, had to have access to the girls' bathroom. And the principal of Fellowship said, I don't think so. That is not happening over our dead body. And they said, oh, well, you have to forfeit your season. So that's what's going to happen. Christian schools are going to be forced to either accept the trans way or be punished. And I said, well, that's why these Christian schools need to, I know. No. They're playing Christian. The Christian school has to play these schools that allow them. Maybe I misspoke. But no, they have to host schools that have trans athletes on their team.
They're not currently in a Christian school league, they're in a public.
Christian school teams that are playing in a public school league. Yeah. But again, it all comes back to what is truth. And you're saying, well, you're trans, so you get slapped with a whole bunch of you're against science, you're against this or that, if you don't hold to the truth. Now again, I look at this and say, I don't have any daughters, I have 7 sons, but it doesn't matter. I don't have to say, well, I understand as a daughter, if I was a father of a daughter, I wouldn't want my girls. You don't have to be completely in line with an understanding of what it would be like to have a daughter on a basketball team or a soccer team or a volleyball team, to understand that this is wrong. Now, there was a bunch of parents who supported the school, but the principal association came out and just said, hey, well, you knew the rules beforehand. This has always been our policy. I said, well, we understand that, but we didn't want to play. They had every right to do that. So some people are saying that they should, go the legal route. I'm thinking, play us Christian schools. And that's how it's supposed to be. Again, we're not talking about being mean towards people who have handicaps, or like this is like the same level of like we don't want blacks on our team or we don't want Hispanics on our team. That's not the same in any way. This is not. But see, often we're going to get hurled all these comments about being transphobic because of this position. That's all they have on their side is to make. We're looking at it from a perspective of it's not only immoral, but it's not healthy to put it in that situation. I heard a situation where a trans boy who was playing on a girls' volleyball team he spiked the ball so hard it broke the girl who was trying to dig it, hit her in the face and broke her nose. Now, there's some girls that can spike it really hard, and there's some girls that play kind of like boys, but that's not normal. That's why there's different divisions. And Leah Thomas, who pretended to be a woman, 6'4" woman for University of Pennsylvania, broke all these records in the NCAA for swimming. Have you heard about that? It's going to continue. It's going to get worse and worse. If you follow me on Facebook, I actually posted that story, Roger, that you just mentioned. All right, let's move on. So we get to the word honest, and in the second word, in verse 8, it says, whatsoever things are true, and that whatsoever things are honest. The word honest means dignified, worthy of honor or reverence. It's the idea of honorable. We call a judge your honor. And so honest also means that the Christian is to think and eventually live in a way that is always above reproach. In fact, this word, honest, is translated 4 times in the New Testament. In our King James Bible, 3 times it's translated grave, because the word grave means serious, but also someone who is revered. Sometimes ministers are called reverend. That's where this word comes from. The idea of somebody who is honest, honorable, somebody who's living with great integrity, above reproach. Remember, we're not sinless or perfect in the sense that we don't do sin. We all sin. I've sinned. But at the same time, we should be living above reproach. Somebody said above reproach is when people sling mud at you, it slides right off. Right? So yes, they may accuse us, but there shouldn't be a whole lot of evidence that points to us being a certain way, especially if they're saying things that are not true. Now again, I'm all for being loving and kind. If I was to debate somebody, even if somebody came to our church and tried to make a scene, which actually happened one night, we caught it on the security camera. They tried to break in to the door and they just put, I think I told you about this, but somebody was putting after somebody gets married, you throw like these little, they were like little images of, like wedding things, like a cake or a bride and groom, but they were all perverted versions of that. So I spent about half an hour sweeping it up before church on a Sunday morning. But I watched the camera. It was late Sunday night. They turned off their lights, came in here, took their camera, was taking pictures of a sign that's on the doors, and then threw all that stuff. They're mocking the fact that we're against homosexual marriages. I didn't tell you that happened? The things that happened in our building. Sometimes it's good to have security cameras and sometimes it's not. They didn't do any damage other than just being, at least they didn't put any graffiti or anything. So. But here's this word, honest, and it's the idea that we are being above reproach. In fact, 1 Peter 2:12, Peter uses it this way when he says, having your conversation or your lifestyle honest among the Gentiles. Do you see that? Above reproach. And then he goes on to say that whereas they, meaning the unsaved, that's why he means by this word Gentiles, he's talking about the unsaved world. When they speak evil of you, or speak against you as evildoers, they may by your good works, which they shall behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. So when then they stand and give an account of their life, they'll know that there were Christians who stood for the truth and lived their lives in an honorable way. So having said that, that's what Paul is saying. We should think about honorable things, things that are glorifying to God. So again, our private life affects our public ministry. What we think about is going to affect the direction of our actions, right? And so the next one is righteous. Moving right along here. I'm not sure if we're going to get them all done tonight, but we'll try. The word righteous means, the word just in verse 8 is the word righteous. And here we have this word meaning righteous, and it carries with it a sense of innocence from anything wicked or evil. So again, we're thinking about that which is true, wholesome, and right, that which is honest, above reproach, whatever things are just or righteous or holy, things that are not wicked. Somebody asked me, do we need to ask God to forgive us for unrighteous thoughts? Absolutely. I'd say, oh, if you could just, if they could hear what I'm thinking. And it's like, well, I was going to say, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. Okay, so I do think your thought life matters. And certainly Jesus even said, what you're thinking about is going to be, you'll give an account for that. So let's think about this verse. When we see it used in the Bible, it's used in a number of ways. It's used like 80 times in the New Testament. But here, Jesus is speaking of the Father being righteous. This is Jesus' prayer. He says, O righteous Father, the world hath not known thee, but I have known thee. Do you see how he describes God as being righteous? So that's the same word as the word just. When we are justified by faith, we are declared righteous by God. We are not made righteous by our own good works, but we are declared righteous because we claim the blood of Christ and the forgiveness of sins. We acknowledge Jesus as our Savior. That's this word. Exciting word. And so, as Christians, to think upon what is just means to think on the holy nature of God and to model our behavior after Him. Does anybody have a thought on that? Anybody? You're doing your best to fit in all the letters. Some of you, Andrea writes really big, so squeeze it in. Anybody else with a thought? How are your thoughts? Are they righteous? Are they wholesome? Are they true? Are they honest? The challenge here that I'm giving you also encourages us as believers to dwell upon only that which is lawful and right according to God. Now, let's go to 1 John chapter 3, and I'll show you what I mean. In 1 John chapter 3, John is talking about not simply, or I should say this. 1 John chapter 3, at least the first 6 or 7 verses, probably the first 10 verses, deal with evidences of your new birth. Okay? So he talks about the love of God in our lives should change us. We are the sons of God, verse 2. But look at verse 7. All right, 1 John 3, 7. Remember, John is writing to different types of Christians. So John is a pastor who has a pastor's heart. He's writing to the fathers. He's writing to the children. He's writing to the strong men. You'll see that division throughout 1 John. When he gets to verse 7, he's writing to the younger believers by saying, little children, let no man deceive you. He that doeth righteousness is what? Righteous, even as he is righteous. So again, the righteous deeds that we do that are truly of God reveal the righteous nature that we have because of Christ. And so my point is that when we're dwelling upon that which is lawful and right or just, in this case, let's go back to Philippians 4, that means that we are going to indeed reveal that with our actions. Okay? Okay, number 4. Paul then says things that are pure. You see that right in the middle of the verse? Whatsoever things are pure. What does that word mean? Well, this word means clean or without blemish and unpolluted from the world's ways. Clean, without blemish and unpolluted from the world's ways. So again, our thought life has a major impact upon how we will eventually live, and even the decisions that we make, and the conversations that we have, and the spirit and demeanor that we give at work or among our friends and family members at all times. what you're thinking about affects you. So Paul is saying, meditate, think upon, dwell upon these things. So the focus, really, you think about it, everything we've described is the nature of God. We're thinking about God. We're thinking about Jesus. We think about all the things that he has created. So oftentimes our thoughts dwell upon the events that have happened in our lives, especially the events that cause us a little bit more trauma. We tend to think about those and dwell upon those. So this is a spiritual discipline of asking God to help us think about that which is right and good. In fact, this word pure is in James 1:27. See right here, pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, that a man visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction and keep himself unspotted from the world. Pure religion. What is clean, what is right, what is morally sanctimonious, whatever word you want to use. This is pure. So purity to our thought life because we've been sanctified. Yes, dear.
Well, it makes me think about the verses in James 1:14, and the fact that we're not thinking along pure things when you're tempted by your own lust, that it brings forth sin.
Yeah.
Death.
Right.
But it starts out with our thought life, and
Sure.
not thinking on what's pure and right.
Yeah, what goes in the eye gate goes into your brain and you dwell upon those things. And yeah, absolutely. Lust of the flesh, physical, lust of the eyes, what we're looking at. Yes, Melody.
I'm just thinking that we're talking about if you want to think good things, but if you do think bad things, you got to make sure to not let them out.
Yeah. Like for instance, when we have moments when we're frustrated, angry, or whatever, and it's not a righteous indignation, that yes, you just immediately say, okay, Lord, I give that back to you. For instance, when we talk about, when the Bible tells us be angry and sin not, we find ourselves angry but don't act upon it, right? So the moment that we have to be angry, sometimes we're angry and we have to deal with something because we've been angered because it was a injustice that was done, something that has to be done. Sometimes our kids know, or grandkids or students or whoever we're dealing with, know that we're serious if we get upset. Like, whoa, what are you upset about? Just because you're upset doesn't necessarily mean you're in the wrong. But oftentimes when we allow that to get to wrath, we start saying things that maybe we have pent up. Remember, our thought life is oftentimes rehearsed in our head. In counseling, I've had some training that said sometimes you're around people who they're called the chili pot person, that they don't let a whole lot out until it really boils over. So they just kind of, everything is stewing and stewing and stewing and stewing and stewing. And then finally, and they start talking about things that happened years ago. It can happen in marriages, it can happen in friendships, it can happen at work, it can happen in a whole bunch of different situations. I've struggled with that, where I've kept some things suppressed and then realized, I need to just make sure that I deal with it properly. So sometimes you may not know what to do other than scream into a pillow or go outside and yell in the woods. Like, what are you supposed to do? You're saying, Lord, help me not to act upon these thoughts. Help me not to even think about them anymore. Now, again, we're not talking about dealing with a righteous situation. We may just have some impure thoughts or some wrong thoughts towards wanting to harm somebody or wanting to, whatever, to somebody that needs a quick fix in your mind. And you're just thinking, okay, I shouldn't think that. And it could even be towards people that really do annoy you. Let's think about this. Our thoughts are greatly impacted by the things we observe, and here we are, listen, the music that we listen to. And this oftentimes is true with our young people. Because I hear people sometimes, I don't listen to music, I just listen to this or that. We listen to a lot of music in our car, and we always have Christian music playing for our kids. We expect that from the kids. We know that they don't always listen to that, even though we want them to. And so we're very careful, especially our older boys. They're adults, especially Luke, Joshua, and Daniel. So we give them that freedom to listen to what they choose to listen to, but not stuff that we may always agree with. But the point is that, does music affect you? Of course it does. It's not amoral. And so Satan knows this and uses it as a way to impact all people, young and old, into the traps of moral perversion. And so now what happens is, when you hear a song that you know is not good, you're thinking, wow, what a terrible song. Change the channel. What the Super Bowl does is take those songs and does a 20-minute strip show based upon the song, where 1 billion people watch. Like I said the other night in church, I haven't watched the Super Bowl halftime show in, I can't even remember. Nor do we plan on watching any of them in the future, or the Grammys, or any of the other shows. It's garbage. It's trash. It's wicked. It's evil. And they don't even care because, well, you're just whatever. I'm not trying to please the world, nor am I trying to please myself. I'm trying to honor and glorify God. So my thought life is affected by that. Gospel Herald is a book from way back, and there's a quote that I found from it that I used in a sermon. I preached on this, like 5 or 6 years ago. So I grabbed that quote, and it was really cool to think about. Victory over harmful thoughts. Again, things that either are going to harm somebody else or maybe even towards yourself, cannot be achieved by suppressing these feelings, but by supplanting them with right thinking, which is the outgrowth of a close walk with God. So again, here's this word. What is right thinking? What is that? What is right thinking? Biblical thinking. And this is a truth that Paul understood because the Spirit of God gave him this discernment. He writes to the Spirit of God, encourages the Philippians to do this. This letter is passed around to the early church, and here we have 2,000 years later, and we're reading it. We're studying it, and we've been studying it for a while. Again, what are we talking about? We're still talking about what? Things that are pure. The purity in your thought life. Like I said, probably each subject could be its own sermon, but let's think about this. What is the difference between suppressing and supplanting? Suppressing means what? You just kind of, like how our kids clean their room when they shove everything in the closet. And don't go in the closet, you open the closet, everything comes flying out. Always like to do that with all the towels in their bathroom. We have four bathrooms in our house, and the one main one is where they shove all of the stuff in. I don't think we're going to check that one. Say certain sons of ours, you open the door, it comes flying out. Boys, you got to fold these towels and put them in the, fold them. Then we find clothes and socks, and there's one of our children in there. Like, come on, there's Andrew. What are you doing in there? What's the difference between supplanting and suppressing? Andrew?
Supplanting is thinking of things like verses and things that are promises and truths of Scripture. I'm not a great memorizer in the sense of memorizing word for word a lot of things, but I remember the thought and the meaning of a verse, and so I think it's important to memorize but being able to look and say, this is a principle of Scripture, repeating that principle in your mind, rather than actual, the exact word for verse or the principle in your heart, helps change those feelings rather than just suppressing.
Okay, very good. Yes.
I feel like the difference between suppressing and supplanting. Suppressing, you just push it down, it's still there, and put other good feelings on top of it, but it's those bad things are still down there.
Right.
Supplanting, you rip it out
Right.
and plant something else there.
You deal with the root problem, right, by supplanting. Suppressing, you, yes, oftentimes have to deal with the weeds that still come back up from not dealing with something. Bitterness, unforgiveness, certainly other problems that come when your thought life is not dealt with. And oftentimes this is what happens when people who are not totally sanctified. And that's what we're going to be talking about Sunday morning. Victory over sinful living and sinful habits. Some people have just kind of almost acknowledged their problem and said, well, that's just how I am. They might base their nationality on that problem or how they were raised or whatever. That could be, semi-true. Probably not so much your nationality, but maybe how you were raised. But you're not then a victim the rest of your life. You can't have victory over it. All right, let's move on. Things that are lovely. Look at that very next one. Things that are lovely. What does this mean? Well, the word lovely means that which is pleasing or friendly. As believers, we're called to demonstrate a spirit of love and cooperation with others, especially as we deal with our neighbors. And so even when people come into our parking lot, we welcome people who visit our church. How are you towards, neighbors? How are you towards people that you work with? How are you towards, people in line at the grocery store or at a restaurant or wherever you may be? Our interaction, this is this word. So we have a pleasing, pleasant demeanor. And this will impact really our testimony for the Lord. Once in a while, you get to find out what other people think about you because they might tell you. But then you might find out from somebody else, hey, you know what? You go to that church over there. I heard about, and you're like, oh boy. I've had some people tell me some interesting things about Tabernacle from way back when. I mean, all the way back when I was just a kid. And some of it was good and some of it was not good. And I don't know how true it was, but I just heard it just from different people in this area. Some people who just kind of talked to me about whatever. The point is that we're kind and loving. And so this word lovely. In fact, somebody, and I can't remember who said this, but I had it in my notes. When the mind of the Christian is set on lovely things such as kindness and sympathy and forbearance, he is a loving person. He's a loving person. And I'm sure we could probably add to that, but certainly a person who's kind, sympathetic, and what does it mean to forbear? It's another way of saying forbear. Put up with, right? You love them despite their difficulties and quirkiness and all those other things. Okay. The last one is think about that which is of good rapport. We have the idea here of that which is good, and this refers to that which is praiseworthy, highly regarded, or well thought of. A movie that Andrew made me watch a long time ago that I kind of learned to enjoy was the 1996 version of Sense and Sensibility, where Mary Ann is the one who's very passionate, and she falls head over heels over someone who's not a noble man. The woman that the older sister, I can't remember her name. What's the older sister in Sense and Sensibility? Anyways, she falls in love with a man who's very honorable, but she keeps her feelings towards him very guarded. So there's sense and sensibility. That's the whole basis of that book. And of course, it's been made into a movie a few times. I remember watching this and kind of, so the two sisters talk about whether or not the older sister is going to get married. And she says, I find Edward to be, and she says something, instead of saying I love him, I find him amiable. It's that Elizabethan English that they're using. And again, it's this word of good report. It's the idea of someone who is highly regarded or well thought of, but she reserves her comments of anything romantic because though she likes him, she doesn't use the word love. Where the younger sister is, she's head over heels over a man who is not a very good man. The point is that we get to this word, and it's at the very end, and he's saying, that's what we should be thinking about. So it's something or someone that deservedly enjoys a good reputation. So these are all words that Paul is encouraging us to think about. And this one, we should think about that which is good or wholesome. And so this word is where we get the word famous. It's the Greek word for where we get the word famous. What are you famous for? Some people are famous for what they sell at a particular restaurant, the famous slice of New York deli pizza, or a type of, Philly steak and cheese, or a famous clam chowder, or a famous whatever. And so it's noteworthy, it's highly regarded. In fact, in Proverbs 22:1, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches and loving favor rather than silver and gold. So the idea is that we are thinking about this from the perspective of that which is praiseworthy or good. Believers must major on the high and noble thoughts, especially as revealed in the pure milk of God's Word, and not dwell upon corrupt thoughts of this corrupt world. And again, does this take spiritual discipline? Absolutely. You've got to be in the Spirit. And so you are literally thinking about these things. You're dwelling upon these things. And your focus then becomes the very nature of God, and godliness will flow from that. So when I fill my head with things through music or entertainment or ungodly conversations with other people or what I'm reading or what I'm viewing in any other way, that's going to change my attitude. So we have to guard our hearts. Are you thinking upon things that are worthy of virtue and praise? That's how Paul ends verse 8. Look what he says. He says, if there be any virtue, moral purity, if there be any praise, think on these things. I know, long lesson tonight, and thank you for being patient tonight as we went through all those. 6 things that we should be thinking about. That which is true, that which is honorable, that which is righteous, that which is pure, that which is lovely, and that which is good. All of those things hopefully are part of your thought life on a regular basis. Anybody have a thought or comment about this at all? Anybody? So what you thinking about? Thinking about, I'm tired, ready to go home? All right, I know we are. So if there's no other discussion on that, let's take some prayer requests. If you're watching online with us and you want to text Andrea or even through the conversation chat with a prayer request, please do that. We'll take some prayer requests tonight, and then we shall close in a word of prayer. Let's, before I see your hand, Roger, again, let's just remember the Hoagies and their prayer requests. They are in the States actually right now. Whoops. So just pray for them. Also, the schools that they have going on, just pray for them if you could. Just add those to your prayer list. A lot happening in the Philippines right now. Yes, Roger, go ahead. Yes, so I had a long conversation with Lisa on Monday. And so Janie fell. And just, again, anytime she falls, the nurse hospice comes over and recommends that they just kind of keep her in case she may have, broken a hip or things like that. So just let's pray for Janie Sampson and her health. She's ready to go to heaven. And she's told me that a few times. Oh, she does? Is that what happened because of the fall? Okay. She does have a broken rib. Okay. Yeah, and now it's hard for her to get around. Tommy lives with her, and they do have somebody that comes in and helps her, but yeah, she's ready for heaven. Pray for Lisa and I talked for a little while afterwards. Ivan is almost totally blind. It's because of his diabetes. So just put the Kuchar family. They've got a lot going on. Of course, Lisa has some things, just pray for Anna, her sister, but she has custody right now of Anna's daughter, besides running her own daycare business. Ivan is not able to work. So, yeah, it's a tough conversation that I had with her, but I said I would mention it. So just a lot going on with the Kuchar family and health needs and financial needs. All right, somebody else with a prayer request tonight. Anybody? Ron?
Well, it's for Sue.
Okay.
She's got a cough. Don't know if it's allergies or she come down with a cold, so.
All right, let's pray for Sue. That cough will go away. Yes, Melody can understand that. Feel her pain. Anybody else with any prayer requests tonight? All right. Again, I'll just say this. Is everybody receiving the Remind app updates I put out there?
Yeah.
Okay. I can see how many people see it. There's been times I put out Remind, like I'll just put something out there. Andrew and I are the ones that control the ones for all of them. So the school and the church, Facebook, and the Remind. So and it says, I said, does anybody need help with shoveling? So the most I've ever seen of anybody who's read a Remind app has only been about 60%. So there's a lot of people who either aren't checking them or not seeing them. That often makes me wonder if there's a current email, or if your so if your cell number has changed, or you're not using a certain email, you can update that, and we can update it for you. But that's one of the ways. I know some of you don't do social media, and you're not, your phone is not your thing that you have very often with you. So, but there are things. So anyways, I put out there if you needed help with shoveling, but if there's anything at all, my boys are ready to help. And we were ready yesterday to go out. Actually had a really nice situation. We were shoveling, our snowblower wasn't getting all of the slush snow off, so we ended up shoveling it. And some kid comes over in a four-wheeler, and he said, "Hey, mister, can I help you?" And he has a plow in the front of his four-wheeler, and he just plowed out a good section of our driveway, especially the stuff that had gone back and forth with that. So I was like, "Hey, I don't have any cash. Can I give you something through, what's it called? Venmo," which is kind of an online way of giving. And he said, "No, I'm just doing it to be a good neighbor." So, nice kid. Anybody else with any prayer requests? We don't have a whole lot here. I guess what I'm trying to say is that communication is key. Just let me know if there's anything that you're ever in need of, especially those of you that are watching at home too. Anything that you need, let us know. Keep your deacon informed.
Stevie. Oh, Stevie.
What's that?
He's better.
Who are you pointing to?
No, Ron's.
What?
How Steve was, he was asking us.
Oh, how's Steve? Oh, okay, yeah.
He's
I don't.
doing better.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. All right. All righty. So, not a whole lot of prayer requests. Ron, would you mind grabbing the red microphone right in front of you, or whatever, Dave, whatever microphone works best or better to deal with two microphones? Okay. For those of you that are watching online, we're going to go ahead and just close in a word of prayer together. So if you're visiting our YouTube channel for the first time, or maybe a couple of times you bumped into this channel, give a like and subscribe and follow us if you would. You can visit our website at tbclitchfield.org. There's a contact way of reaching out to us if you'd like to know more about what it means to be saved and have your sins forgiven and know that you are a child of God. Or maybe you're looking at becoming part of a good local New Testament Bible-believing Baptist church and you want to know more about what that means. I'd love to talk to you, reach out to you, and we can have a conversation about it. For our church members who are watching, God bless, good night, and hope to see you another time. We're just going to close in a word of prayer.
Heavenly Father, this